in the on your participant list. If you click to open your participant list, you might find the green check, red X, or even the raised hand on your participant list. So Zoom likes to do things differently for different people. And so depending on what device you're on, and if you're updated on your Zoom, where I'm telling you to find things, you might not find them there. Thanks, Zoom, for that. But if you would take a look around during the presentation, particularly to find your chat and or your raised hand, because the chat is a great place to drop your question, especially during the presentation, because we're going to hold it Q&A to the end. And the raised hand will be very helpful for when you have questions. So with that, also please stay on mute. If you're not on mute, I will mute you to help ensure that everybody can hear whoever is presenting. And so with that, I'm going to ask Nancy to advance us to what I believe is going to be our opening prayer. Yep. And we have the lovely Eileen Walsh here, who's going to do our opening prayer. And let me see if I can put the camera on her.
Eileen is a board member and the head priest at St. Christopher's in Portsmouth.
And let me get rid of my background and she won't look so, there she is. Okay, now you have Eileen on camera and she's going to do our opening prayer for us.
Let us pray. Loving God, we give thanks that we have a place like Chanco to come to. We give thanks that we're able to come here this summer. We are very joyful and happy about that. We ask that you bless our time in tonight. In this time of answering questions and learning more about our experience at Chanco. We give thanks for all the people who work so hard to make this happen for us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Eileen. All right, so moving right along, Nancy, this one's yours.
So I'll just pretty much tell you what's here because we are so excited that this summer we're open. As you know, COVID changed a lot of our environments and we're just so happy that things have opened up for everyone. And while we are going to be open, Garrett's going to tell you a little bit more about what is and isn't happening exactly the way you need to know for the summer. But that flexibility is important because as many of you know, just in the last few weeks, everything has changed. We've had new information and that may be the case another month in. So we want to be sure we're informing you as quickly as possible each step of the way. And that's what these town halls have been about. We have that main strategy to keep a healthy camp environment throughout. And there is no perfect plan. We know that things happen, but tonight we're sharing our current plan. So we hope that we can fill that information and help you answer some questions before you arrive. Do not hesitate to call. That's the main thing I want you to take away from tonight is if you don't know something or you don't get the answer clear after we are off the Zoom, please reach out, call us, let us help you answer those questions before you get here. And I think that we will all have a great summer. I know we will. Our staff is already here getting ready for you. They're very excited. It's a wonderful team. We have lots of returning staff. We have new staff. We have former campers who are now becoming staff for the first time. So it's a real good mix of people who are love Chanco, and we are welcoming you here soon. So we appreciate your support, and I'll let it roll over to the next part of our presentation. Oh, no, I'm still on. I forgot. So this is just a reminder. This Sunday starts the first session. We welcome our 1-weekers. They're going to be here for the first session in Mariners Camp. So we're excited for that. Overall, we have more than 445 campers coming this summer. And a few of our sessions even have wait lists. So if you're on and you haven't registered because you're thinking you're coming to 4th session and you have time, please get on there and register today. We don't want any problems with the dates you had hoped to be here and having maybe when you log in, you'll find out that it's actually on a wait list. Again, if you run into a problem, give us a call. And I'll turn things over to our executive director, Gareth Kalfas, who is going to share some of the more nitty-gritty details about coming to camp this summer. Gareth?
Thanks, Nancy. As Nancy mentioned, things are changing quickly, and we're trying to stay as flexible as possible. We operate not only in accordance with CDC guidelines, but we also have to pay attention to what the Virginia Health Department is telling us, as well as our diocesan medical advisors. And based on the best practices and the advice from our diocese, We have a two-pronged approach to make sure we're keeping all of our campers and staff safe. The first is we're doing everything we can to keep COVID out of the camp altogether with pre-camp screening. I'll talk about that more in depth in a moment, but all campers and staff are required to have a negative test prior to arrival. In addition, most of our staff are already vaccinated, and if your camper is of an age that they can, we'd encourage them to do the same. But we're also taking precautions in case some COVID slips between the cracks. Maybe somebody's test came back negative, but they were positive. Maybe somehow a bug got through. Well, because of that, we are also using the cohort model, which is again recommended by the Virginia Health Department. And basically, that just means that we're creating small units within the broader camp community. Folks already say that being at Chanco is kind of like being in a bubble, protected from all the craziness that goes on in regular life. This year, we're just creating bubbles within the bubble. So each campsite, which already is a group that gets particularly close, will get a little extra close, spending their time together. We'll have some camp-wide activities, but when we do, the campers from different groups will not intermingle. They'll instead keep that 6 feet distancing. That way, everybody will continue to be able to have a great time, but we'll avoid any close contacts between groups. So if we do have a case of COVID, we'll prevent the spread from one group to another. So Julie will flip the slide and we'll talk a little bit more about that testing. Testing has been a challenge in different ways over the course of the pandemic, from the days when there were long lines and people were shoving rods into your brain to just being able to find a test in your area. We're trying to make it both affordable and easy for you by offering two options. Our first option was to partner with a company called Grapefruit Testing, who provide tests at no cost to you. They bill either your insurance or the CARES Act to get funding for the tests, and they mail the test straight to your home. So you can self-swab, send it back with an overnight package, and get your results and bring the results with you printed when you drop off at Chanco on check-in day. But we know that for some folks that has not worked perfectly, either because you had trouble scheduling a telehealth appointment or it just didn't feel like the right vibe for you for some reason. So we have another option as well. On the next slide, you can get your own PCR test. There are folks that have found it easier just to go to the local pharmacy and get a PCR test there. In either case, whether you use the grapefruit testing or whether you use the PCR testing at a local pharmacy, the key is it needs to be a PCR style test with a negative result, and the test needs to be taken the week before you come to camp. You can't use a negative test that you have from 4 months back. If you have more specific questions, as Nancy mentioned, please do feel free to give us a ring and ask questions that way. Those are the two details regarding the PCR tests. But we also have some other things that, of course, just like always, we need you to bring on check-in day. And that is, we would like to have everybody's paperwork completely done online and have your physical form, which must be signed by a doctor within the past 12 months, submitted prior to arrival. This year's arrival, we are working to make it as contact-free as possible. You come in, we'll have a car hop come right up to your window. They'll say, hey, you've got all your stuff submitted. You'll park, you'll rotate turns, going to visit the nurse. We'll have our typical lice check. If you have medications, have them handy so you can submit them at the time. And then you'll drop off luggage and be headed right back out on your way again. We tested it with our staff and things went smoothly. And if you've got all your paperwork and payments turned in, it should be very quick and smooth for you as well. Speaking of pickup and check-in times, this year, just to further minimize contact between folks in different groups, we have staggered drop-off and staggered pickup times. You'll see here that the check-in times are designated by campsite. We have hour blocks for drop-off and half-hour blocks for pickup. The Monday prior to your Sunday check-in, you'll receive an email from Marjorie Gay here in our office letting you know to which campsite your camper is assigned and what time you are assigned to drop your camper off. You'll also want to make note of that same email, as it will remind you of what time to pick your camper up. A reminder of the sessions that are available, knowing that some are already filled, and Julie will answer and field questions for us.
Thanks, Gareth, and thank you for all that great information. We did get a question that already came in while you were talking, and that is, if all campers are negative, why are we keeping them apart?
And I think I saw that might have come from our friend Gretchen. So thanks for the question, Gretchen, and it is a good one. I think that we're trying to be mindful of two things. One is we are mindful of the science and the things that are being told to us by the experts. And the other is we're trying to follow the things that have been given to us as best practices. Right now, the Virginia Health Department is saying that both of these things are the best practice. And they're encouraging and asking all camps to follow both of these protocols. If at some point they loosen their guidelines, we'll respond accordingly. But it's kind of like the old Swiss cheese analogy that we've now heard a million times, which is the more layers of protocols you have in place, the more likely that you don't have positive cases, and that if you do, you don't have a positive case turn into a major outbreak. We do know that last summer, some camps were hit by the pandemic in a very unfortunate way, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen here at Chanco.
Thanks, Gareth. We have another question I'm going to get to in just a second. I did want to make sure, in case there were some folks that came in after I talked about it before, that if you have a question, please feel free to use the raise hand button on Zoom. That should be under the reactions button, but depending on your device and or your most current version of Zoom, it could be on your participant list, or you might just have to touch your screen if you're on your phone. But find that raise hand button if you have a question, and or drop your question into the chat, and we're going to try to field them all before we're done here. And our next question comes from Mike, and he wants to know, will the schedule of, sorry, the ice machine's making noise in here. Will the schedule of drop off and pickup be put out to the campers via letter or email?
That's a great question, Mike. We will be sending an email the Monday prior to your upcoming Sunday's check-in, and it will be sent to both parents who are listed, if you have both parents listed on your Camp Brain registration portfolio, profile, whatever you want to call it. So if there are two emails, one for mom and one for dad, or one for each of two guardians, both folks will receive an email, same copy, saying exactly which campsite your camper is staying in, as well as what time is the applicable drop-off and pickup time for that campsite, and therefore for your camper.
So this is, I put the slide back up that was in our slideshow, just to make sure people know that this is already up for those who are arriving Sunday. So this is session 1 in Mariners Camp for this coming June 27th.
And Gareth, if I'm correct, it will be the same all summer long, just replace Mariners with the other specialty camp.
Absolutely. So here we're listing Mariners, but that other specialty camp could be Wilderness Camp, could be Ropes Course Camp, and then of course we'll have a second Mariners Camp at the end of the summer. The only thing that's not really covered here is senior high is a smaller group, and so we'll send out something for senior high campers as well, but these items don't apply to them.
Gareth, we have a question that came in on the chat. How long does it take to get results back from grapefruit testing?
Sure. I wish I could give you an answer, but it's not exactly the same, and it's not perfect for everybody. But the thing that they've been telling us is if you take your test on Wednesday or Thursday, ideally on Wednesday, we should have the results by the time you come to camp. You should also have those results. When the results are available, you'll receive an email from their partner laboratory, which I believe is called Ethos Labs. And that email will ask you to set up an online profile or an online login. You'll do that. You'll get another confirmation email about 30 minutes later. Then you'll log in and be able to download a PDF or a document that has your results on it. It's very straightforward, not too terribly taxing.
All right, thank you, Gareth. And we have a hand raised from Julie. And Julie, forgive me, but I'm going to give it a shot. Marchesi, please correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to unmute yourself so you can ask your question. Julie, I see you unmuted yourself, but we cannot hear you. Oh, Julie is connected. There we go. Julie, can you hear us now?
Sorry about that. I was having technical difficulties.
No problem.
I just joined a minute ago and I have a question about the actual test. We haven't received it yet in the mail. I called grapefruit testing and left a message on, it's just a cell phone number it appeared to be, and haven't heard back yet.
I'm guessing that you're coming to session 1 then, is that right?
Yes.
All right. If you'd be so kind, give me just a second. This is kind of very specific, but I'll give you a direct response in the chat after checking an email. I know that there are some people, we received the tracking number for everyone's test kits that were going out. And there were some folks who did not receive theirs yet as of today. And we asked to have a new test kit overnighted. So give me just a second. I'll respond to you directly in the chat, and we may have a follow-up phone
Great.
call.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Julie, for your question. Anybody else have another question to drop in the chat or use that raise hand feature? I got one here. If a test is conducted outside of grapefruit, should those results be sent ahead of time or brought the day of check-in? The previous slide said bring with, but wanted to confirm. That's a great question. Gareth?
Bring with would be great, but if you send ahead, as long as you don't send it that day, if you get it in by the Friday before, sending ahead will be great. But don't send it like Saturday night or Sunday morning, because it'll just be too hard to scrape those things together and get them in the right spot at the right time.
So bringing it the day of is acceptable.
It's perfectly okay.
Yep. As long as it's the PCR test, that's the thing to remember is we need the PCR test. All right, great questions. All right, a general camp question. Are you guys still going theme nights this year? Where can we find out what those nights are? That is a great question. And I will share that I know that they are still doing some fun evening programs and have lots of things planned for you guys. But I think it will be different for each session. And I don't know, unless Gareth, you can tell me otherwise, if they're sending anything out ahead of time for that.
This year we're not, and we're doing less theme meals this year. That's just kind of the reality of this year and the way things are going to be a little different. But I can tell you for a fact that we are definitely going to have Chanco Pride Night. So make sure you bring plenty of Chanco gear to wear for that last night at camp. And I think we're still planning in our 2-week sessions at least to have a dress up dinner type theme to go with Eucharist, which will be in the middle of our sessions. Whereas for this year's 1-week theme, or excuse me, this year's 1-week session, we'll be doing things just a little differently and having Eucharist on opening night. So if your kids want to wear some fancy digs for opening night Eucharist, they're welcome to do that as well. I see a question about change for Chanco this year, submitted by Nancy Beach, who also knows the answer, so I'll let her speak to it. And I'm supposed to do a little direct message back. Is that to Julie Marchese or Marchese? Is that right?
Yes, Julie Marchese or Chasey, yes.
All right.
Hey,
Julie, how do we say it so we get it right next time?
It's Marchese.
Marchese. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
And Mike, I see your hand up. We'll call on you in just a second. Nancy, you want to tell us about Change for Chanco?
Well, I want to make sure that everybody on the call who's especially coming for first session is has found their Change for Chanco box, and that you're starting to put some things in there. Coins rattle, paper works, but as you may know from your information in your packet, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, on anything that I might say here, because you're very aware of this since you actually got one this year. I have the first time I'm not sending a camper, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew we are adding bike trails. And these trails are going to be on the perimeter areas of Chanco's property. And our long-term goal is to really build that up so that we have additional programming, because as many of our campers on the call know, one of our things in our song is bike trips, and we really want to bring the bikes back. So this is an important value that we have that we're bringing to Chanco again, and your change for Chanco is going to help make that happen. So feel free to share it at your parish, at your neighborhood, at your family members, anything like that that you might find interest in knowing more about it. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you
But there's
so
an
much.
ice cream party for the winning campsite.
And checks are always welcome too for Change for Chanco.
That's right. Any kind of paperwork.
All right, Mike,
Attended.
you have your hand up. What question do you have?
Okay, so this is it's a generalized question. So, I mean, obviously we didn't have Chanco last year. Bradley's, last year would have been his third year. This would have been his fourth year if it hadn't have been for the COVID. And my question is on the colored feathers. So for those campers that have been there multiple years, and in Bradley's case, this could have been his fourth year. Is he going to get the colored feather for the third year or the fourth year?
Yes, so he would be a third-year camper this summer. That is correct. We did do for our fourth years last year a special Zoom initiation, but for all subsequent years coming this year, it will be their year that they would have been last year. So third years are third years, second are second, first years are first years. Fourth years are fourth years, but they can do the initiation in person while they're here. And get officially tapped in. So
Okay.
Your year is still your year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much for that question. I got another good one in the chat, Gareth. Can we donate online for Change for Chanco?
They absolutely can. There might be just a little bit of logistics with that. And I would think that the way to do it is when you go to our website and go to the PayPal donation button, make sure that in your comments, it is clear that it is a Change for Chanco and also your camper's name and the session they are attending. There's a way when you make one of those online donations to include some comments. And if you don't include the specific comments, then I'm afraid we won't know to apply it to Change for Chanco for your camper. So make sure those notes are in there, please.
That's awesome. Good to
Yes,
know.
and Nancy points out that if you happen to know which campsite your camper will be in that session, include that too. Of course, if you're making it now for a session 4 camper, we'll figure that out. We'll sort it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for that great question. Wynn, I see you have a question.
So what activities will we be doing?
That is a great question. You're going to get to do all the activities you always have done at Chanco. There'll be swimming, sailing, archery, ropes, tomahawks for older campers, archery. I said archery. What am I missing, Gareth?
Zip lines,
Zip line,
swimming, kayaking,
kayaking, paddleboarding.
paddleboarding.
So all the great things that you've done every summer, you're going to get to still do them this summer with your campsite, just like you did every other summer. There'll still be evening programs. Some of them you'll do with your campsite, some you'll do in the path. You'll be with your campsite in the pavilion, but all the other campsites will be there as well, or half of them maybe. But yes, you're going to get to do all the fun things you've always done, but you'll be sticking with your campsite, which will be.
Have you been here before, Wynn?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, you're gonna see so much that you're gonna have so much fun.
All right, so what other questions do we have? Any other hands, any other questions into the chat? All right, well, not seeing any, while you guys might think about that for a minute. Oh, I see one that just came out. I'm gonna ask that in a second. But I just wanted to throw out that this is being recorded. We're going to put it up on Facebook. So if you came in late, you could watch the beginning. And of course, you can always email hospitality at chanco.org. and ask your questions afterwards. If you think of something after you come off this, which is the kind of thing that happens to me. I get off my meetings and I'm like, dang, I should have asked this. And so just get online, email hospitality@chanco.org and send that question and we'll make sure to get back to you. Suzanne asked about canteen hours. And Gareth, can you tell us about our canteen hours this summer?
Sure. The only real big change to canteen time is that it will not be open on check-in and drop-off day or drop-off and pickup days as it usually is. The kids will still have a chance to go to canteen daily. This year, it will be before dinner time and in rotation with free swim. Some kids will go to a free swim activity before canteen and then canteen. Others will go to canteen and then free swim. Both of those right before dinner time. So somewhere in the 4 to 6 type time frame. And of course, we'll have the same goodies available as always. We'll have some candies and soft drinks and bubble waters and iced teas and other type snacks. Plus, we'll have all the Chanco swag your campers love, stickers and hats and sweatshirts and the like, and t-shirts. And if you've pre-ordered your t-shirt, you'll receive your t-shirt at canteen, most likely on the first night.
And toothbrushes and toothpaste if you forgot them. All right. My son is new to Chanco. Do you have daily schedule for the first session or June 27th to July 2nd group posted? We do not have a daily schedule, I don't think. Gareth?
We don't, but I can give you a rough outline of a day at Chanco. So, campsites will wake up somewhere around 7:30 or so. They'll do a little getting ready for the day, making their bed, putting their shoes on and the like. Breakfast will be at 8 o'clock. After breakfast, we'll have our morning worship, which some days will be in the campsite and some days, during first session, we'll always be in the campsite. During our 2-week sessions, some of the days will be in the pavilion. After that, we'll go off and do a few activity blocks. If memory serves correctly, we'll have 2 blocks of activities in the morning, another 2 blocks of activities in the afternoon, followed by, again, that canteen and free swim rotation we talked about, dinner, showers, and then an evening program. Then we'll lather, rinse, repeat. I see a question about the canteen and how much folks spend, and that might be a good place for me to jump next. There's no such thing as one answer to this. Some people bring a ton of money and buy the hooded sweatshirt and the hat and all the candy they can possibly buy. And some kids bring a little bit and go home with all their money, never having spent much of it. But we figure 25 bucks a week is a good approximation. Maybe a little more if you want to buy that one big ticket item. Or parents can also call the Chanco office, purchase that big ticket item over the phone, and have it shipped to you for just a little extra without ever having to come in the store yourself to get it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Gareth. And I can second that with $25 is about what I've always sent my son for his 1-week sessions, and he's usually not spent it all. Henry had the question about, can we talk to the nurse at drop-off? And if not, can we call ahead if we'd like to speak to the nurse?
If I heard the question right, it was, can I speak to the nurse at drop-off? And then there was a follow-up. But yes, everybody will have the opportunity to speak to the nurse. Our typical procedure is, if you don't have any medications or special medical issues, you bypass the nurse, just get your head checked for lice, and move right on to the next step. However, if you need to speak to the nurse, that is always an option. And if you have medications or special medical considerations, then we ask that you must speak with the nurse so she can collect the medications and then have a conversation with the parent. I will mention, for those of you bringing medications to camp, all medications must be in original packaging. And obviously they need to be prescribed by the physician and for that camper and within date and the like. You cannot take and just send 7 pills in a Ziploc baggie. That is not something under which our nurse, who is a registered nurse, may dispense the medicine.
Gareth, what about not prescription medications?
Sure, sometimes a parent might send a PCR or as needed medication along, but you'll also probably recall that when you filled out your health history and forms online, there's a place where you could just click yes for some of the most commonly administered medicines. Off the top of my head, I can't remember them all, but it's things like Tylenol and Pepto-Bismol and things of that nature, just simple over-the-counter as needed stuff. And if you checked yes for those type of headache and allergy type items, then our nurse has those in stock on hand and can administer them under standing orders from our camp physician, which means you don't need to send a little first aid kit with all the what ifs. As a matter of fact, because of the American Camp Association policies, medications must all be stored under lock and key in the infirmary, not in your camper's trunk. So please make sure that when you show up, in addition to a face mask to be wearing, medications, any paperwork that you may have brought with you, your change for Chanco box, please have all that out and ready. We don't want you to have to dig through all your stuff and search for it. So to remove any surprises now, we'll let you know. Medications, your face mask, change for Chanco box, all that you want to have readily accessible. Whereas other items like your change of swim trunks, that can be packed in the trunk.
Gareth, we have a question about sending Band-Aids with our campers and as opposed to going to the nurse, but it would be, I would expect, as it was when I was a counselor, that every campsite has a first aid kit. And so the counselors would be able to get them their Band-Aids or any necessary things like that. But it would also be okay to throw a few Band-Aids in your kid's trunk.
Sure, this is a two-part answer, Julie. The first is that you're right, that the counselors can administer what I would call the very basic first aid. They can do a scratch, they can do some of that type of stuff. But it's also true that in order to be in compliance with all the world's best practices, we're going to log any sort of medical treatment. We'll keep a written record of it. That's just what we do at camp. So whether it be a little scratch with a Band-Aid or something a bit more serious, it's going to make it into the medication logbook. So even if you bring a Band-Aid of your own and put it on yourself, we're still going to contact the nurse and have her recorded in her logbook. But that doesn't mean every time we have a scrape, the nurse needs to come see you personally. The counselors take care of that kind of stuff. So you don't really need those Band-Aids. If it makes you feel better to bring some, feel free.
Thank you so much, Gareth. All right, guys, I don't see any new questions in the chat or hands up. Do we have anything else you guys would like to ask or talk about? Suzanne, go for it.
Sorry, I came late and perhaps you already addressed this. I already sent a private message. My son met with the telecounselor and we were told to expect the test kit today. It didn't come. She said something about there being rapid tests on site. I mean, I hope it shows up tomorrow morning. But like, what are you doing about the testing if the test kits haven't arrived?
Sure. So this is a case-by-case conversation, but I'll say very generally that we did review every single tracking number that we were provided, and there were some that have been delivered and a few that were not. And so we've requested new kits to be overnighted to those households. And so I can't speak to your specific situation without you giving us a ring, but as a general statement, those that did not get to the homes on time, that got lost in the postal service and are running late, we asked for new overnight shipments. So if you didn't get one, there's a good chance that it'll be in your mailbox tomorrow. And we certainly ask that you take it tomorrow and send it right back in. Ah, I see a question about electronics as well. I'm going to reread the question, or maybe Julie, you can read it and then I'll answer it.
That's all right. You're doing a good job. But do kids leave all electronics at home? Guessing and hoping the answer is yes.
It's an excellent question, and there is a certain amount of parent discretion here. We really advise against bringing something like your Switch or your iPod, because expensive electronics items, while they might be kind of fun to have, there's not a ton of downtime, and you'd hate to have that kind of more expensive item get lost or broken or rained on or anything of that nature. So because of that, we advise against it. That said, if you have a camper that wants to bring something that plays music or wants to bring something that plays a game to use during rest period, that's okay. I will say there won't be anywhere to charge it for them. And I can also let you know that cell phones in particular, or anything that transmits and sends messages and calls and the like, those items aren't allowed. Maybe your camper doesn't suffer from homesickness, but it could be a real homesickness problem for another camper. And there's also certain distractions that come along with it. So no cell phones or anything of that nature. But if you want to bring a digital camera that's not a cell phone, if you want to bring something that plays a game or makes some music, that's fine. Battery operated fans are fine. A lot of people like those on a hot day. Julie, Nancy, any other items kind of like a fan that people sometimes bring?
Now, I can't think of anything that you haven't already talked about as far as some music or, I know I sent my son with waterproof playing cards because he likes to play a game called Spit a lot. And it involves no spitting. It's about playing with cards. But I sent him with waterproof playing cards so that they don't come back a complete mess. We have another question, Gareth. Do fully vaccinated kids have to wear masks?
So our masking rules are the same for everybody, mostly for a sake of some set of fairness or equality, knowing that some people can get the vaccine right now and others can't, just to kind of give everybody an even playing field. We do hope that as many people as possible will be vaccinated, and we're really doing our best to minimize the time that any of our campers are wearing masks. By using the cohorting model and keeping the groups of campers well separated from one another, there will be some times, but we'll keep it to rather few when the campers need to wear masks. There might be some other times where our staff are wearing masks so that the campers don't have to. We're going to do a lot of outdoor activities. We're going to keep our staff that are not part of that cohort separated by a distance whenever possible. Our staff will be wearing masks sometimes. And by using the cohort model, when you're around your camper group and your group of counselors, masks off, totally okay. So there's going to be a lot of that going on. Hanging out with your group of kids, your group of friends, and your counselors, no masks, playing gaga, enjoying snacks, all the stuff you do every day at Chanco.
Thanks, Gareth. All right. I do not have a new question at this point, and I don't have any hands up. This has been a great session. And again, it's recorded. It'll be available on YouTube. And for those of you who were late, to make sure you go back and catch everything that was covered. And again, I'll repeat, please do email hospitality@chanco.org or even call the phone number you see on the screen. If you have any other questions, we want to make sure that you have all your questions answered. And I know, as I said, some of those questions might come to you after the Zoom is over. Gareth, do you have anything else you want to?
I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us through what's been a challenging period. A lot of the folks that we have coming to camp this year signed up to come last summer and just rolled their registration, their deposit, and their faith in us forward to this year. And we're still putting up with some challenges and some extra hurdles. So thank you guys for putting up with those things, helping us navigate these interesting COVID times to make sure we can still have this great time here on the banks of the James. We all need a little more of this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gareth, and thank you all. I hope you guys have a great evening.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
here soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.